So this is part 12 of exposing false doctrine. And in this video, I'll be exposing Sunday sacredness or Sunday worship as a false doctrine. And I'll explain why it's false. But I'd like to start by reading Matthew 15, verse 9, which is also repeated in Mark 7, verse 7. And both those verses say, "But in vain or uselessness do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men." So in other words, there are many who think that they are pleasing God by following certain traditions, but they're actually worshiping God in vain. They are not worshiping. God does not accept their worship because he is not happy with the way they are worshiping him. They are not worshiping God according to the way he has commanded. They are worshiping him according to the traditions of men, or here it says the commandments of men. Okay, then we have Isaiah 8:20, "To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them." So in Matthew 28 verse 1, I'll just read that. Says, "In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day." So let me just go back a bit. These verses I'm going to read next, they are verses that talk about the first day of the week. So, since the argument made by Sunday keeping Christians is that the day of worship was changed from Sabbath to Sunday. Of which obviously we don't read anything about that in the Holy Scriptures. We don't read anywhere where it says that the Sabbath was changed to Sunday. And I know that there are many people around the world these days who actually don't know that Sunday is the first day of the week. They think that Monday is the first of the week, and there are calendars that actually show Monday is the first of the week. And obviously that's a plot by the Catholic Church to make Sunday the seventh day, because if you have Monday as the first day of the week, then Sunday would be the first day. Sunday will be the seventh day of the week. I beg your pardon. Remember that in Daniel chapter 7:25, which I've quoted many times, it says, speaking of the little horn power, which is the Catholic Church system, that he shall think to change times and laws. And the papacy has sought to change God's times and laws. For instance, if you look at New Year's, they say that New Year's is on the 1st of January, in the middle of winter, when actually the New Year is supposed to start in spring. And the whole thing that a day starts at midnight, when actually a day starts at sunset, according to the scriptures. So even the changing of the day of worship from Sabbath to Sunday was also done by the Catholic Church. And I'll show you evidence of this. I'm not just saying this as an opinion. So the verses I'm going to read next, they talk about the first day of the week. Since we hear arguments that the Sabbath was changed to Sunday, we'll see that these verses that mention the first day of the week being Sunday, they don't say anything about Sunday being the Sabbath. Okay. Matthew 28 verse 1, "In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre." Okay, we hear that as the Sabbath was ending, going into the first of the week. So that would have been at sunset, since the day begins at sunset in the scriptures. Going into Sunday, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to the sepulchre where Jesus had been laid to rest. Mark 16:2, "And very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun." So these two verses I read just now, they're actually talking about the same thing. They might be from different parts, from the different Gospels, Matthew and Mark, but they're talking about the same thing. Then we have Mark 16:9. "Now when Jesus was risen early the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 devils." So here again we read of the first day, of the week. That same day when Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to the sepulchre, later on that day, Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene. Then we have Luke 24, verse 1. Now, upon the first day of the week. And actually, the interesting thing is in the King James, the translators of the King James Bible were actually, they tried to be as honest as they could be, and they put words that they supplied, they put them in italics. So the word day, when it says the first day of the week, the word day is actually in italics, showing that that word, the word day, was put there by the translators. So you should actually read, this is Luke 24 verse 1 again. Now upon the first of the week is how you should read, but it says the first day of the week because the word day was put in by the translators. It says, very early in the morning they came unto the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them. And then we have John 20 verse 1. The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. So this is also repeating what Matthew and Mark said. Okay, same incident written in the different Gospels. Then we have John 20:19. Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, came Jesus and stood in the midst, and said unto them, Peace be unto you. So this is an account of where the disciples were meeting on the first day of the week, which we know to be Sunday, not Monday, as is sometimes shown in some of these these modern calendars. Then moving on, we have Acts 20 verse 7. It says, upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight. So there's an incident here where Paul met with disciples on the first day of the week to break bread, and I'll address all this because some will say this shows that Christians were now meeting on Sundays, and Sunday was now the day of rest. But we don't read here that this was a special day of rest, or that the first day had become the Sabbath. We don't read that. They were just breaking bread. Okay. Then we have 1 Corinthians 16 verse 2. Upon the first day of the week, let everyone, this is Paul speaking, by the way, writing to the Corinthians, upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay by him in store, as God has prospered him, that there be no gatherings when I come. Okay, Paul was even saying here that he didn't want the Christians to gather on the first day of the week. He said, just lay aside. I believe this is talking about tithes and offerings, that they should put their tithes and offerings aside for him, so that when he went past those different places where Christians were, he would just go there and collect the tithes and offerings. And he said, let there be no gatherings when I come. So these verses I've read from Matthew 28 verse 1 to 1 Corinthians 16 verse 2, they talk about the first day of the week. There is nowhere in here where it says that the day of worship was changed. We don't read of the first day being a day of rest on par with the Sabbath. We do not read in any of these verses that that the first day of the week was now the Sabbath. We don't read about that. In fact, the change of the day of rest came later. It didn't come when in the days when the Apostle Paul and the other disciples and the early Christians were still alive. That came later. So and there's what's called the Lord's Day, which is mentioned in Revelation 1 verse 10. It is thought by most Christians to be Sunday, but actually when it says the Lord's Day, it doesn't say anything about Sunday. It's just an assumption, which is obviously Yeah, excuse me. It's actually not correct to say that the Lord's Day is Sunday. So Revelation 1 verse 10, from which we get the words the Lord's Day, it actually says, this is John the Revelator speaking. He says, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day and heard behind me a great voice as of a trumpet. Yeah. That's all it says. It does not say that the Lord's Day is Sunday, but somehow Sunday keeping Christians have taken that and they've run with it and said that the Lord's Day is Sunday. There's nowhere in here where it says the Lord's Day is Sunday. So let's just go through some history of where Sunday worship or Sunday sacredness came from. Got a book here by Philip Schaff, and the book is called History of the Christian Church. Says, when Emperor Constantine I, a pagan sun worshipper, came to power in AD 313, he legalized Christianity and made the first Sunday keeping law. Just bear in mind that I'm not reading now, but I'm just this is these are my thoughts that I'm going to express now. The reason why it says here that Constantine legalized Christianity is because Christians had been persecuted by previous Roman emperors, including Diocletian, something which I addressed in my video on the first, where I basically explained the first 10 verses of Revelation chapter 2, and explained that the Church of Smyrna was persecuted by an emperor called Diocletian. Christians were persecuted by previous emperors that came before Constantine. But when Constantine came along, he legalized Christianity. But what actually happened is that there was an amalgamation of Christianity and paganism. And Constantine says here that Constantine made the first Sunday keeping law. Just reading on here, it says his infamous Sunday enforcement law of March 7 AD 321 reads as follows: on the venerable day of the sun, which is Sunday, which is even the days of the week are named after pagan gods, of which Sunday is named after the sun. It's the day of the sun. Okay, it says, on the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and the people residing in cities rest, and let all workshops be closed. Like I said, this is from Philip Schaff, History of the Christian Church, 5th edition. And from a book by Charles J. Heffel, A History of the Councils of the Church. Yeah, I think this is volume 2, page 316. The Sunday law was officially confirmed by the Roman papacy. The Council of Laodicea in AD 364 decreed, Christians shall not Judaize and be idle on Saturday, but shall work on that day. But the Lord's Day, see, the Christians were even being compelled to work on Saturday, whereas they'd actually kept Saturday as a Sabbath. They were being told to work. Why? So that they could desecrate the Sabbath, but do what? But keep Sunday. It says, but the Lord's Day they shall especially honor. Yeah? This is the Council of Laodicea that decreed this. And just going on, it says, and as being Christians shall, if possible, do no work on that day. So they were supposed to work on Saturday, but rest on Sunday. If, however, they are found Judaizing, and Judaizing here is referring to those that kept the Sabbath, the true Sabbath being Saturday. And when we say Saturday, we mean Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. Okay, Saturday sunset. It's the Sabbath is kept or celebrated from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, from evening to evening. They shall be. It goes on to say here, they shall be shut out from Christ, those who keep the Saturday Sabbath. And then Cardinal Gibbons, in Faith of Our Fathers, it says 92nd edition here, page 89, freely admits, you may read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation and you will not find a single line authorizing the sanctification of Sunday. The scriptures enforce the religious observance of Saturday, a day which we, the Catholic Church, never sanctify. And again, it goes on to say, the Catholic Church, by virtue of her divine mission, changed the day from Saturday to Sunday. So the Catholic Church actually admits changing the day of worship from Saturday to Sunday, Saturday to Sunday. So I don't know why Christians argue and bring up all these different points about, oh, Jesus was resurrected on Sunday, therefore that's why we keep Sunday. There's no command that says we're supposed to keep Sunday. And this is from, this was James Cardinal Gibbons again, but this was from the Catholic Mirror, from September 23, 1893, and from a publication called Our Sunday Visitor from February 5, 1950. February 5, 1950. Protestants do not realize that by observing Sunday, they accept the authority of the spokesperson of the church, the Pope. So by keeping Sunday, you accept the authority of the Pope. In other words, it's like you're accepting that the Pope has authority over you as a Christian. Of course, the Catholic Church claims that the change, Saturday Sabbath to Sunday, was her act, and the act is a mark of her ecclesiastical authority in religious things. This is H.F. Thomas, Chancellor of Cardinal Gibbons. The Catholic Church, this is another reference I'm going to read here. The Catholic Church claims that the Church is above the Bible. This transference of Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. This is from the Catholic Record of London, Ontario, September 1, 1923. Then we have the Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, 1957, page 50, by Peter Gierman. There's a series of questions and answers here to do with Saturday and Sunday. The first question is, which is the Sabbath day? Answer, Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer, we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. And in Daniel 7, verse 25, which I've also already made reference to, but I'll actually read it here. It says, and he shall, and the he is being spoken of here is the little horn, or the papacy, which is headed by the Pope. The popes of Rome. Of course, now we know that the Jesuit general and the Jesuits have more power than the Pope. The Jesuits took over the Catholic Church in 1814. I'll not go into too much detail about that history, but yeah, they were abolished by Clement XIV, Pope Clement XIV, but they were brought back in, allowed to come back by a different Pope, Pius VII or one of those popes, and that was in 1814. So Daniel 7:25 says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints. So the great words against the Most High here are actually blasphemy, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Wearing out the saints is referring to persecution. And think to change times and laws, and I've already addressed that, I won't repeat that. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. So the Christians, God will allow Christians to be persecuted and to suffer at the hands of the papacy for a time, times and the dividing of time. That's referring to the 1260-year prophecy, which is sometimes written down as 1260 days, but it's actually 1260 years of papal supremacy. So sometimes it can be referred to as 42 months. It's all referring to the same thing. But the main thing I wanted to get out of this verse is that the papacy, it was prophesied that the papacy will think to change times and laws, and it has done that. So there are actually many things I could have shared with you with regards to the whole Sabbath Sunday issue. There are many books that have been written about this. There are many quotes I could have quoted, but it would make the video very long. But that's all I wanted to share. I think the other thing, for those who are still keeping Sunday and arguing about Sunday being the holy day, because maybe that's the church that you go to keep Sunday, and the church you're still going to the church that your parents went to, or the church that your mother went to, and the majority of Christians around the world believe that Sunday is holy, and we're even hearing of calls for Sunday to be reverenced and kept as a day of worship, because we even have this argument that the reason why there are so many bad things happening in the world is because of the desecration of Sunday, that the shops are open on Sunday, there are sports activities that happen on Sunday, and that all this should stop. We even have politicians that have said all this, and we have the members of the public who are also pushing for this to happen, that shopping should stop on Sunday, shops should be closed. And in fact, in some European countries, and I believe in Germany and in Austria and other parts of the Europe, most shops are closed. They even have Sunday laws in some of these countries. So there is a great agenda to make Sunday a day of rest, and it's actually connected to the issue of climate change. Which, of course, climate change doesn't exist. It's all a hoax, just like this pandemic. Okay, it's all about herding people and getting them to behave a certain way. And with the ultimate goal being to get them to obey a pre-planned agenda, of course, to bring in the New World Order, but also to get to control human beings, basically, and to strip them of their rights. So the connection between Sunday and climate change is that it's going to be said at some point that if we rest at least one day a week, it will reduce emissions. Since the claim is that emissions from cars and planes and coal trains, or trains that run on coal, and all these emissions that we produce. In fact, some will even go as far as saying, even me breathing, when I breathe out, I exhale carbon dioxide, that this is also adding to or contributing to climate change. That emissions actually cause the temperatures in the earth to go up, which then leads to the melting of the ice in the Arctic and Antarctic, for which there's no evidence, by the way. I mean, even some of those who are, the proponents of climate change, such as Bill Gates and others, and the Obamas and others, they will say they believe in climate change, and they believe that emissions are, warming up the earth, and because of that, the ice in the Arctic is going to melt, resulting in the rise of sea levels. But yet they are buying very expensive houses next to the sea and things like that. So I mean, even the people that are pushing the climate change agenda don't even believe in it. It's all about controlling human activity, because by saying that, even when I'm driving this car, they'll say driving cars is actually bad for the environment because of the emissions that come from cars, which then also lead to climate change and pollution. Basically, the message is that I should stop driving my car. Or if I go on a plane and fly somewhere, they'll say they want to limit how often I fly, because by flying frequently, planes are emitting emissions which then lead to climate change. It's all about controlling human activity, taking away our freedom to travel, taking away our freedom to eat certain foods like eating red meat, or even eating chicken and eating goat meat. They'll say all these animals, especially cows, have been blamed for contributing quite a lot of emissions, which they say, once again, lead to climate change, which is all nonsense. That's not science, okay? That's a false religion. So why am I talking about trying to link Sunday to climate change? Because eventually they'll say we need to rest at least one day a week in order to reduce emissions, and that the day that's going to be picked is Sunday. Yeah, but it's taking a long time for this to happen, because obviously they want to make sure they close all the loopholes, and also there's going to be a lot of opposition when this is eventually done. That's what all the COP meetings are about, the meetings that happen every year now. The last one was held in Brazil in 2025, where there was actually a massive fire that burnt down quite a few of the structures there. So that's in fact, I've actually what I'm going to say now, I've actually said before, but I'll just repeat it in case some of you have never heard it said before. Maybe you never watched my other videos where I address this issue. The Sabbath, if you look at the word Sabbath, you have the word Abba in the middle of it, and Abba means father. So it's actually the Sabbath is the day of our Father, meaning the day of our Father in heaven. Okay, it's the day on which He has said He wants to be worshipped, because God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days and rested on the Sabbath day, and He has never said that the Sabbath has been done away with. Those are men's opinions. Okay, and I know there's an argument that the Sabbath was done away with when Jesus was nailed to the cross. Also, once again, we don't have when it talks about the law being nailed to the cross, is talking about the law that was written by Moses, because there were two laws. There was Moses' law, which was, once again, written by Moses, and then we have God's law, which was written on stone. Okay, the 10 Commandments were written on stone, signifying that they are everlasting. So those two laws, one was done away with. It was the one that has to do with the Jewish sacrificial system, and the sacrificial system pointed to Christ as the ultimate sacrifice, the one sacrifice which will be sufficient to save all of us, those who are willing to be saved. Okay, that's addressed in the book of Hebrews, and in other parts of Paul's writings. So when Paul talks about the law being done away with, he's talking about the writings of Moses, not the 10 Commandments. Paul was Jewish himself, and he actually kept the Sabbath. If you go to the book of Acts, there are many verses that talk about Paul keeping the Sabbath along with the other disciples. Okay, there's Acts 13:14, there's Acts 15:21, there's Acts 17:2, Acts 18:4, and many others. I'm doing this from memory. Okay. So I was explaining why is there such a big debate about Sunday and Sabbath? Why are the majority of Christians keeping Sunday, whereas the Bible clearly says we should keep the Sabbath? And some will say the commandments were nailed to the cross, but if you go to Revelation 22 verse 14, he said, "Blessed are they that do the commandments, for they shall have a right to the tree of life, and to enter into the gates of the city." Blessed are they that do the commandments. To do the commandments is to keep the commandments, or to observe the commandments. So even in the last book of Revelation, we read that we're supposed to keep the commandments. And Jesus said in John 14:15, "If ye love me, keep my commandments." The commandments have never been done away with, of which the Sabbath is a part. What's the reason for Sunday and a majority of Christians keeping Sunday? Well, the short version is that most Christians keep Sunday because of deception, okay, because they've been deceived. But the further explanation is that, as you heard from what I read earlier, Sunday was the day on which pagans, Sunday is the day that pagans, it's the day on which pagans worshipped. Let me put it that way. And why did the pagans do that? We know that the whole keeping of Sunday as a day of rest then came into Christianity, especially through Constantine, because when Constantine claimed to have been converted to Christianity, there are many pagans in the Roman Empire who followed his lead, because Constantine was not only the emperor, he was the high priest as well of paganism. So they followed his lead and said that they had also been converted. I'm referring to the pagans, but they came into the Christian church with their Sunday, the belief in Sunday sacredness, and even with their idols. The statues of Jupiter were now called Peter and all this stuff, and Isis became Mary. So there was basically an inversion that took place. But why Sunday? I know I keep going on, and I'm not really getting to the point. Why Sunday? Because Sunday, let me just go back a bit. Lucifer, the name Lucifer means the shining one, or the light bearer. Okay, Lucifer means the light bearer. So Lucifer, who we know to be Satan or the devil, has chosen, since his name means the light bearer, is to do with the light. Think of the biggest shining object in our sky. The biggest shining object in our sky is the sun. So Lucifer has chosen the sun, the biggest shining object in our sky, to represent him. So that's why he has deceived many people, whether Christians or not, to keep Sunday as a sacred day, as a day of worship. But they're actually honoring him. But am I saying that those who worship on Sunday are worshiping the devil. No, I'm not saying that, because God, it says, the Holy Scripture say that God winks at ignorance. Yeah, God winks at ignorance. It means He forgives those who do things ignorantly. But for those who know the truth, when they continue to disobey God, they'll be held to account. Okay. We're told, I think, about 2 times in those scriptures, that we're not supposed to resist the Holy Spirit when we hear the truth. Okay. So once you know the truth, you're supposed to follow what where the truth leads you. You're supposed to obey what God says. God is interested more in our obedience than in our tithes and whatever material things we can give to Him. For instance, in 1 Samuel 15 verse 22 and 23 says that when Samuel was speaking to Saul, he said, let me just read it. Yeah, like I was saying, this is when Samuel was speaking to Saul. This is when Saul had been given the mission of destroying the Amalekites, everything that belonged to the Amalekites themselves, but also their animals and all their possessions. But they kept some of the cows and the animals, and they said that Saul said that these had been kept so that they could be sacrificed to God. But Samuel said to Saul, hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, and as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. So some Christians will think they can please God by giving Him tithes and offerings, but yet they don't obey what He says. And then verse 23 goes on to say, for rebellion is as a sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, He hath also rejected thee from being king. Okay, so the most important thing is to obey God, to obey what God says. The only way we can show love to God is by being obedient to Him. That's why Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments. Yeah, so just for the sake of not making the video too long, I'm going to stop there. But for those who still have arguments against what I've said, I would suggest you continue, to do your own research here, study the Holy Scriptures, and just look for any verses that say that we should keep Sunday. You won't find them. There's not a single verse that says the law, the commandments, the commandment with regards to which day we're supposed to worship was changed. There's no command to keep Sunday, okay? And the argument that Jesus rose on Sunday, therefore we should keep Sunday, there's nowhere where it says we are supposed to do that. Let's just simply believe what God says and follow what God says. In other words, be obedient to Him, like it says in 1 Samuel 15, verse 22. So I'll end the video there, and thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you on the next one.